Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Mind Beneath podcast. Today, we're going to be exploring when the healthy becomes the unhealthy. And I think it's easy to think of things as either good or bad and very black and white, and that things that are good are always good. And if something is healthy, how can it possibly be unhealthy? But what I hope that we see today is that it's more about our relationship with the healthy habit that's important. So there's three things I want to talk about that interest me, especially when they can become the unhealthy. And the first thing is when exercise becomes unhealthy and when we become addicted to exercise. Now we hear so much about how we should all be exercising more and all the benefits exercise brings, to the point that the idea of how can it be bad to be addicted to exercise if it is so good for us. This is perhaps the best way we can define exercise addiction. So, an insatiable craving for physical activity which compromises their physical and or mental health. A need to exercise that becomes uncontrollable, basically, and that you must exercise. So this can show up with things like how it dominates your everyday thoughts and you get cravings, like would for other addictions like drugs or sugar. Your mood can be very negative when you skip exercising, be it lifting weights or going for a run, and then you can start having conflicts with people around you. Classic sort of behaviors you see with other addicts, and you can see that if they become addicted to exercise as well. So I think we need to understand this more, and there are two types of exercise addiction. So the first one is called primary exercise addiction, and to put it simply, these types of exercise addicts use exercise as a coping mechanism for issues in their life. So there is such a thing as runner's high, where runners feel a release of feel-good endorphins and other feel-good chemicals that makes them feel good. And it's worth mentioning that not everyone experiences runner's high, and research has shown that some of us experience very little elevation in our endorphins and other feel-good chemicals when we run, and I know that I am certainly one of them. So, but for those that can experience a runner's high, and they feel good and they have these elevated levels of endorphins, people can become addicted to these feel-good chemicals to cope with life. Very similar to other addicts who lean into alcohol or drugs to get that high for whatever reason. I'll talk more about why they do that later. But the second exercise addiction type is called secondary exercise addiction, and it's a bit more nuanced than the previous type. This stems from an overwhelming need for either thinness or muscularity. So when films, TV and social media show us images of people who are unrealistically thin or muscular, we call these thinspiration and fitspiration. And to be unrealistically thin or unrealistically muscular, I can remember Hugh Jackman talking on the Graham Norton show, the chat show, talking about how when he would do the shirtless scenes in X-Men as Wolverine, he would not drink water for 2 days, I think even over 2 days, so that all the veins would pop out and really show and make him look even more hench, even more muscular. And I don't know about you, but that seems wrong to me, to put that body image on a film and it being clearly unrealistic, because we can't all dehydrate ourselves to have our veins popping out looking good. So these exercise addicts who crave thinness or muscularity they feel dissatisfied in their own bodies. They strive and they strive, coming from a place of desperation to reach unrealistic goals. And that's when things like body dysmorphia can come in as well. We don't realize how fit or slim we may already be. And so scientific research has shown that exercise addicts often have dissatisfaction with their own body and are preoccupied with their body weight. And they also have a tendency to be perfectionist, have anxiety and OCD. But if we really want to understand addiction, and therefore addictions to exercise, we need to look at these two rat studies. So in the 1960s, there was research involving rats in their lab cages with two different bottles of water, one with ordinary water and the other would have drugged water with either heroin or cocaine laced in it. And the study showed that nearly all the rats would drink the drugged water, and several even dying from overdoses. They would even OD themselves. And I know, talk about an unethical experiment. And the message this study gave the world was that animals and humans alike are apparently very impulsive creatures, and drugs and these other addictive substances are the problems, and that apparently it's very easy for us to get hooked on them. However, in the 1980s, someone called Professor Alexander came along and said, of course these rats were going to drink the drugged water. They were trapped and isolated in these small cages. So what he did, he created the experiment, also using one set of water and another the drugged water. And the difference was the rats lived in what he called rat park, where the rats were able to hang out with each other, play, explore, and have a larger area to live in. And the amazing thing is that nearly all the rats chose to have the normal water and would avoid the drugged water. So what does that tell us? The stimulant itself, be it exercise or smoking, is largely irrelevant in my eyes. Having an addiction to those just represents something about our own livelihoods. Now, don't get me wrong, exercise is fantastic for us physically, for our mood, and very good for bringing us confidence in our bodies and appearance, in fact. However, it's important to not come from a place of lack or using exercise to run away from something. We must still remember to look inwards. I myself regularly exercise and go to the gym. Done great things for my confidence, great things for my health. I'm strong, I'm fit. And you feel good after you leave the gym. Exercise is great for us, but you must not come from a place of angst, from a place of anxiety, using it to enhance yourself, using it to add on what you already have. Come from a place of abundance already when going to the gym or going for a run. So the next thing that has a lot of talk around it and how good it is for us is to think positive thoughts, to be positive, to always think positively. How can this possibly turn into being unhealthy if we take it too far? That is totally valid thinking. And so when we hold on to negativity and take a negative stance on life, this negativity is very sapping of our energy and our life force. It keeps us in a perpetual state of fight or flight, to put it simply, in a survival state, and not in a free and happier state of living. Think about when you're expecting for something to come up and to complain about, and your state is just negative and your zest for life is gone. Think about when you are just expecting badness or expecting something to complain about. It takes your energy and puts you in a negative state, in a toxic state. And research is very supportive of maintaining a more positive outlook on life. And It's helpful for greater resilience to illness and improved cardiovascular health. And there's so many benefits to having a more positive outlook on life, seeing the glass half empty than half full, puts you in a calmer state, happier state. So it's simple, just convert all of our thinking to be positive. It's not quite as straightforward as that. And let me talk about a couple of studies for you. So one at Yale University studied the psychobiological factors linked with the severity of breast cancer. Women who reported fewer negative feelings experienced a worse prognosis compared to those who were more true to themselves and their negative feelings. Those who also engaged in more pleasant daydreams would also experience a worse prognosis than their more reality-based counterparts. I'll repeat that again. Women who reported fewer negative feelings experienced a worse prognosis compared to those who are more true about their negative feelings. So you could put it simply as worse breast cancer, which is a fascinating result. And another study with lung cancer patients highlighted that lung cancer patients experience sleep difficulties comparable to those with insomnia. They'd have similar levels of lack of sleep, of insomnia. Yeah, the lung cancer patients significantly underreported their sleep problems compared to insomniacs. Why? That study doesn't give a conclusion to why, but it relates. But you could say, you could theorize, similar to the study at Yale University. So more research is needed because this is really out there with the idea of over-positivity being linked with cancer. But what they suggest is that an excessive focus on positivity can render us unaware of our internal states, making us less capable of effectively dealing with stress. So we must be authentic. If you are arguing a lot with your partner and you're believing you just need to think more positively, perhaps that will render you unaware of the very real problems there are in your relationship or in yourself or in your partner. To be overly positive is to be dismissive of problems in your life and in your health. And I would hazard a guess that to be an overly positive thinker, to be connected to anxiety, in my opinion, and a lack of confidence, a way of avoiding problems in your life because you don't feel comfortable to face it. So you feel you can fix everything by just being positive. So many of us can absolutely be more positive, but we must keep it real. Like if there's genuine problems, you have to face it, and perhaps the overly positive person with that anxiety leans into this magical cure of being positive all the time, a way of avoiding. We must be positive, but be keeping it real. So that's the second one I find interesting and wanted to share with you. The final one is the comfort zone dilemma. So life is a constant balancing act between two places. One is comfort and the familiar, the routines we know, the places where we feel safe and in control. And the other is uncertainty, the places we've never been to before, the things we've never done, and the moments where we don't really know how they're going to turn out. And now most of us naturally drift towards comfort, because after all, why wouldn't we? It's predictable, it's safe, and it doesn't ask much of us. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with enjoying comfort. The problem is when comfort becomes the only place we're willing to live. Because here's one thing, nothing really grows in permanent comfort. So think about your own life. Some of your proudest moments probably weren't the easiest ones, and wherever it may be. And maybe he was giving a speech at a wedding despite hating public speaking, or starting a new career, or becoming a parent. How all the challenges that comes, all the discomfort that brings, but how much meaning does it add to your life? Traveling somewhere completely unfamiliar, and at the time you probably questioned why you'd put yourself through it, but afterwards they're often the moments we look back. They're often the moments we look back on with the most pride. Um, and then there's an interesting conversation that I listened to between a guy called Paul Bloom, a psychologist, and Michael Mosley, who's no longer with us. And Paul Bloom, made a point about that I found that has stuck with me, and that I um, try and live my life by. That a good life isn't about chasing happiness every minute. It's about pursuing meaning, and it's about contrast between comfort and discomfort. Imagine exercising in the morning, pushing yourself physically, and then spending the afternoon sat on the sofa watching football. That feels so much better to me when I go and train in the morning, and then I can really and be productive in my day, doing things that might be called minor stressors. But then I can enjoy so much more sitting in the evening watching telly or whatever it may be. Whereas if I did that all day, I'd probably feel rubbish. So without challenge, comfort loses some of its meaning. And this is actually very similar to what the writer of Man's Search for Meaning wrote about. Rather than making happiness the goal, he argued we should pursue meaning, like I said, because happiness tends to come and go, whereas meaning gives us something much deeper. And research supports this as well, scientific research. So one study I found, it was a large European study involving 40,000 people they found something really interesting. Parents weren't necessarily happier than people without children, but they did report that their lives felt much more meaningful. Like I said, this is why I try and pursue meaning as opposed to pursuing happiness or pursuing comfort or whatever it may be. Meaning feeds the soul. I'm sure anyone who's raised children probably isn't surprised by that result. Raising children is incredibly demanding and exhausting, but deeply rewarding. And other research has found that people who report a stronger sense of purpose also show greater activity in parts of the brain involved in planning, decision making, memory, and personality. So it's almost as though we're built to grow through challenge rather than simply avoiding it. And I know how much I've grown stepping out of my comfort zone. And another interesting finding for you from the research. So researchers looked at people who actually valued stepping out of their comfort zone. And they found these people had a greater confidence in themselves when facing other difficult or unfamiliar situations. And I know I've felt that way as well. You feel confident in all aspects. That's why I like to seek stepping out of my comfort zone. It just breeds confidence in your whole self, not just tied to that one specific thing. And it makes complete sense, really. And confidence is something you can grow and develop, and it's repeatedly proven to yourself that you can cope and that you can do X, Y, and Z. And stepping out of comfort zone, remember, doesn't have to be something that makes you miserable. It doesn't mean saying yes to everything or deliberately seeking really stressful situations. It simply means choosing experiences that can mean something to you, even if they're uncomfortable. Let's say you struggle with public speaking when you're younger, and it's important to you to show yourself that you are capable, that you can do it, to prove something to yourself. And there's something meaningful in that. Or even if you just want more confidence because you care about yourself, looking after our health isn't just exercise and diet. It's mentally, it's spiritually, and that's what stepping out of our comfort zone and seeking discomfort can do to us. Especially when there's meaning tied around it, like choosing to commit to raising kids. And of course, people always say, but what if it all goes wrong? And yeah, sometimes it does. Your flight, if you're choosing to travel, your flight could get cancelled, or you could have booked the wrong hotel, or that the speech you made didn't go perfectly, or that you stuttered, or whatever. But I ask yourself this: when you look back in your life in 20 years, do you think you'll remember every comfortable Tuesday evening watching the Champions League? Like, no, you're not going to remember that. But will you remember that solo travel you did, or that trip with friends and family that almost went wrong, or the challenge you almost didn't take, the things that scared you but ended up becoming one of your favorite memories? Even when things don't go to plan as well, as I have definitely learned, they often leave us with great lessons. And that failure of that isn't a bad thing. And it's not the opposite of growth. Because at the end of the day, stepping outside of our comfort zone isn't really about thrill seeking. It's about living in line with the person we want to become. It's standing up. It's standing up to give the best man speech because your friend matters. It's raising children because because family matters to you. It's changing careers because fulfillment matters to you. And there's one phrase which I really like, and I'll end this podcast with for you. A ship is always safe at shore, but that's not what it's built for. And I think all of us are more capable than we realise. But those are the interesting things about when the healthy becomes unhealthy, about how healthy exercise is, but we must come from a place of abundance, not from a place of lack. And when we think more positively, remembering to keep it real and to make sure that we do purposely step out of our comfort zone, so then our comfort zone becomes so much more enjoyable and we will grow so much from doing that. So thank you for listening. I hope you've all gained something from this.